Hi, welcome to this week's bonus clip. We recorded this as part of our wrap pod following the Ireland-Romania match, which you'll find on Apple, Spotify, and all the usual other places. This week, I have Keno Miller and Kieran Duffy with me. And starting with yourself, Keno, just wanted to talk about the return of Johnny Sexton to the Irish lineup. We last saw him right at the end of the England match when the Grand Slam was pretty much in the bag. And what he means to an entire setup having him in the squad.
Oh, it's nice having him back, isn't it?
Yep.
No, but seriously, but seriously, I mean, Johnny Sexton really does mean so much, not only to Leinster on a club level, but to Ireland. It's really hard to overstate how important he is. Beyond all the statistics and the accolades that he's had so far, his real value to the sides he's involved in, it lies in his ability to drive standards in training and to inspire those on the pitch. His commitment during training sessions and his drive during matches is just phenomenal. And you just have to hear any of the people he's played with talk about him to really understand just how true that is and how much and that underline that. And it's not just lads from Leinster who play with him. It's the guys from other provinces as well that recognize just how important he is and just how much he gives to the side. Yeah, given all that time he had away from the pitch due to incidents and accidents, that performance against Romania was a bit of a masterclass, really. There's still so much talk over his. I mean, there's constantly talk over his age profile. He's being asked it in interviews and everything. It's a little bit insulting at this point. It's like, yes, we know he's old for an out half, but he's also really good for an out half. So maybe ask questions about that bit rather than the age thing. Anyway, I mean, like, to come back and he bossed it from the off. He's been off the pitch for 6 months solid and more. But he didn't put a foot wrong. I literally can't think of one thing he did wrong in the entire match. His kicks were on point. His kicking from hand was on point. His tactical decision making at the line was on point. He was quick and sharp, and he scored 2 tries. I mean, I know it was a high scoring match, but and one of them was a bit of a gimme, but one of them certainly wasn't. So to come back like that after all that doubt is massively impressive. I mean, when he's playing with Ireland and when he's playing Leinster and Ireland, he just changes the way the team play. The way he orchestrates the moves. Yes, it's a mix of kind of tactical kicks and structured phases and dynamic backline movements, but it's his knowledge and vision that allow Ireland as a team to exploit those last moment gaps and changes in opposition's defense. It's why they use that multi-option system that gives us so much more flexibility than we had under the Schmidt era, where it was very prescribed set plays, where you were very much a cog. And that was great and it got us far, but this is an evolution again. But I don't know if it works with anyone except Johnny pulling the strings to the same extent. In crunch moments as well, when game hangs in a balance, his voice and guidance and leadership and decision making is absolutely pivotal. It's his experience and composure, having steered Ireland through many's a squeaky bum situation. I mean, quite notably, one of my favorite ones in France with Le Drop. I mean, that was one of the most stunning executions of multi-phase rugby against the grain that I think I'll probably ever see. It was poetry. Again, if that's Johnny Sexton not there, that doesn't happen. I honestly can't think of another out half that could execute that. Yep. Now then, this is with or without Sexton. So without Sexton, I mean, in the absence of his leadership and tactical acumen, you have to rely on more of a collective approach. You're relying more on maybe a steadier hand at scrum half, maybe a Conor Murray. He does have that more experience. You might lose a bit of speed at ruck time, but he is hugely experienced and he's able to run a game. It's also then a chance, obviously it's an opportunity for some of the younger out halves. I mean, this is one of the issues with having an amazing world-class player at a position like out half for so long is that it can create a lot of shade for the little daisies of other out halves trying to grow up through. It's difficult. It's very difficult. Because especially at Leinster, yes, he doesn't play a huge amount, but he is the top dog for when the big show is on. He's the guy if he's fit and healthy. So, we're looking now. We are seeing more chances for your Jack Crowleys, your Ross Burns to get opportunities to take the reins. It was great to see over the summer series that there was then that opportunity. I mean, it wasn't great the circumstances that it happened, but it was nice to see the outcome where the outhouse were absolutely given. They had free reign. They were running the captain's run. They were running the week from start to finish as the out half. And I think that could pay dividends down the line, even in this tournament. But certainly then we look to after the tournament, well, it's post Johnny Sexton, and we've no more Johnny Sexton. Um, Possibly in rugby at all, according to himself. Anyway, he seems like he's ready to kick it all in, but I think I'll believe it when I see it. So, then there's the kind of the post Sexton era. You're kind of looking then at maybe the younger generation again of out halves. Even you're looking at developing talents like Prendergast coming up, and I keep hearing this every year. Oh, you think this year's under 20s were good? Wait until you see next year's. So like there's always more coming. We are no longer in a time where we kind of like, okay, depth chart. Where do we have to get players from? There are players coming from across the board, all four provinces coming on, and it's pretty exciting. But will any of them ever be Johnny Sexton? No, none of them will ever be Johnny Sexton. Will any of them ever be as good? I can only hope so. But he's kind of one in a million.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, Ciarán, he's been, it has been a question of like how you play with him and how you play without him. I mean, but of course, up to now, for the past 6 months, we've known he's been out, like Cian said, we've known he wasn't going to play. So it is a different, it's a different feeling maybe in camp for the out halves, knowing that it's only going to be them. So like, we almost got a taste of what it was going to be like when he is gone.
Yeah, and that was part of it through the Six Nations. There was always going to be someone has to lock down that number 2 spot. I was of the opinion after the Six Nations that, Ross Byrne, he had done a good job. So right, he should be, it's just good to have someone stick as number 2 for the World Cup. After the World Cup, then you can you can see who starts. So that was my view. Then obviously the end of the URC and European season came along. I think if Sexton's playing in that European Cup final, that's probably a very different story. Ross Byrne, he didn't really take control of the game the way we would have liked him to. That was a potential. It was a big game for him, and it was a potential turning point in his career. He didn't really grab the opportunity. And in fairness, I think I think all players, especially fly halves, are going to have times in their career, where there's adversity. And that might have been Ross Burns. I do think he can bounce back, and I think it's important to forget. I think he's gotten a lot of unfair criticism lately, and he's in bad form. He's not a bad player. I mean, it's I think it's very easy to write players off. During the Six Nations, he very much cemented that number 2 spot. Probably if you're talking about who's on the bench at the moment after Sexton, it's Jack Crowley. I mean, he finished the season so strongly. During the warm-ups, he was better. And the reality of the World Cup, it's not about developing players, it's about playing your best players as well. He covers a multitude of positions. Well, it'll be interesting to see what happens after, because if Sexton's fit for the whole tournament, he starts every game. Well, he starts against South Africa, Scotland, the quarterfinal, and hopefully beyond. He might not start against Tonga. What's interesting is, though, I think both Ross Byrne and Jack Crowley could do a game time in this tournament. So it'll be interesting to see does Ross Byrne hasn't played yet? Does he start against Tonga and Sexton on the bench? Crowley start against Tonga and Ross Byrne on the bench? It's an interesting dynamic when it's down to Ross Byrne and Jack Crowley. It might be a case of the right player for the right occasion. I think Ross Byrne's good at keeping things ticking over, and then Jack Crowley comes on. He's a very dynamic player. So we have to keep in mind Crowley's quite young, and he hasn't had that kind of moment of big adversity yet. He hasn't had the Ross Byrne in the European Cup final yet. You know, he's and it's credit to him how well he's taken that number 10 spot at Munster and how he's wrestled his way into the Ireland setup. But in fairness, you know, he's going to have a time where he has a bad day off the kicking tee, or he doesn't run things well, or he has a bad game away to France or away to England, and then it's about bouncing back. So I think it's really important for Ireland going forward that we aren't reliant on one player as much. And obviously when it's Johnny Sexton, look, no one was as good as Johnny Sexton, even when he was playing in France. You know, or a few broke protocol and had him still in the team because he's Johnny Sexton. I think it's really important. I think that you know, it seems strange to say it because he was by far our best player, never mind best fly half. But that might have been a mistake in terms of developing other players. I think it's really important that, you know, obviously you're going to have one fly half who's kind of your main fly half. At the moment, that's Jack Crowley. I think it's important that the likes of Ross Byrne and anyone else who comes up. I think the talk of Sam Prendergast being in the World Cup squad was ridiculous. He's played about 3 games for Leinster. I mean, he's doing great. The big point about it is, look what happened with Joey Carberry. I mean, so we had Ronan O'Gara, then Johnny Sexton came along. He was the next great. There was that bit of tension, the famous camera turning to one while the other was taking a kick. And then Sexton was the man. And then Joey Carberry came along and it was like, right, he's the next great Irish fly half who's going to be, he's just Sexton can retire now. Joey Carberry is gonna lead us into a new age and get us past the World Cup quarterfinal. And then the problem is, yeah, and I don't think it helped the nature of the move from Leinster to Munster, how big of a deal that was. It probably in hindsight would have helped them to go to Connacht or Ulster rather than Munster, in terms of the rivalry, in terms of such kind of rivalry. But obviously Joey Carberry then injuries, loss of form, shouldn't have been brought to the 2019 World Cup because he wasn't fit. That really didn't help him, and now he's not near the Ireland squad. And to be honest, like he's probably a long way off. He's probably not even for choice really. Fly half. He's certainly, you know, if there was an injury tomorrow and we needed a new fly half, it would probably be Ciarán Frawley called up rather than Joey Carberry. So like that didn't help him, and I don't think it's a good idea to pin anyone as the next best. It's not a good idea to pin anyone as the next anyone. Let them be the type of player they are. So I hope for Jack Crowley's point of view, Ross Byrne's point of view, they're both given opportunities. They're the next 2 up, based on the current kind of layout of things. Obviously, there'll be a time for the likes of Sam Prendergast. If Jack Carty has a good season next season, he can be brought back in. You know, I think we need to pick the best players. But at the same time, you know, when it's post-Sexton, we'll need a situation where it's, you know, we'll need more than one outlet. We won't just have one playmaker. Like, you know, so the collective effort, you'll have Gary Ringrose suddenly becomes a lot more important. The back row suddenly becomes a lot more important. Scrum half again, yeah, maybe Conor Murray's the way to go at scrum half, just because he has that bit more experience, bit more of a steady hand. There's, you know, suddenly the experience of other players becomes a lot more important because we've been very reliant, for better or worse, on Johnny Sexton. He is obviously one of the best players in the world, never mind for Ireland. But at the same time, it's dangerous because, you know, if we find out this week Sexton has an injury and will be out for the rest of the tournament, the worst nightmare, you know, suddenly then we have to change things up. And that's not to say Crowley and Ross Byrne aren't capable fly halves, but suddenly the whole game plan changes. Suddenly everything changes. And, you know, if this is his last World Cup, I hope we get past the quarterfinal because he deserves it. I'm glad he got to finish on the Grand Slam. Brian O'Driscoll obviously got to finish with the Six Nations title, not a Grand Slam, unfortunately. But, you know, he's been there for so many big moments. He's been crucial for so many big moments. I've, for the last kind of 5 or so years, said, look, I think we should rest Sexton for this tour to Australia. I think we should rest Sexton here. It's never happened. He's played all the time. He can't play this last 6 months. It's kind of the longest we've been without him. I was worried when he hadn't played in any of the warm-ups, would it take him a little bit? Didn't take him any time to get up to speed. He was straight away. And the great thing about Sexton is he'll be disappointed about that kick he missed. He'll be thinking, like, I missed that one kick. And, you know, that's just the nature of his standards. If you had to pick one player to, you know, I don't know, put some kind of bubble wrap spell on and say he won't be injured till the end of the World Cup, I think you'll have to say Johnny Sexton. He's massively important.
Yeah, I mean, the only thing I'll add to all of that is I think one good way of measuring a player's importance is just basically how other fans react to him. We always knew how Richie McCaw, for example, was kind of divided opinion all around the world. But that was part of what made him great. I think that's all part of that. And when you look at the way Sexton is received, I mean, we saw it with the online reaction to that whole kerfuffle after the Champions Cup final, which has been long talked about. But also, we just had an example here. If you listen to the actual podcast that we recorded on the Romania match, you heard Kino talking about this incident at the end of the first half when Sexton was in the act of scoring a try, and a Romanian player came in to challenge him just at the last minute. And on first look, and any first look as you watch the score of the try, it looked like it was worth a second look at the very least. I mean, Sexton got up and he was hurt his hand, and he looked at him like that. If that was any other player, you'd say, "Oh, she should look at that in replay." And guess what? When you looked at it in the replay, you saw it was okay. It was just an incident. It was a bit borderline. Maybe he shouldn't have slid in. Maybe Sexton slowed up a bit, whatever. But it was okay. Nothing to see here. But because it was Sexton, you look at the reaction online. Oh, he was too lazy going over the line. Oh my God, he was this. I look at him moaning. He was whinging. He's always whinging and moaning, complaining, and all this stuff. It's like, yeah, I'll go over and stand in your hand and see if you whinge and moan and complain, whatever. It's the instant attitude that it's riled up in people, whatever he does. And I'll also add, it's not just non-Irish fans that do that either. We all know that this has been going on for a while, and this is about Sexton. And I think it was Tom Coleman who said on the pod once before, he's a grumpy shite, but he's our grumpy shite. Yeah. And I think that's the summary of what Sexton is. He's going to divide opinion. He's got a definite personality. He's honed in on the game, and I think he affects the team. I think he does affect the team even when he's not there, when he's in the squad. I think he's essentially part of the coaching staff and part of the brains trust of the strategy. I've often, the past few years, I've said both Leinster and Ireland are almost like a Formula One car that's been designed for him to drive. And basically anyone else who takes it, anyone else who takes the reins, they're driving it for now, but it's not changed too much for them. It's still the same kind of car and the same kind of structures. And that's not a bad thing. And he's a very structures oriented person. And like Kino also said earlier, he started to mix things up a little bit, and he's given himself more options. You often see three players running ahead of him, and he's behind them, barking orders, telling them which way to go behind them, and it's amazing to watch. But no, I think it is important to talk about what Ireland is like without him and going forward. And I think the two lads have done a great job of that. So fair play.